Hi, I'm Linda, and this is No Frills ASMR. I was thinking of talking to you today about a fire that I remembered from the 1980s, and that is the MGM casino fire. And the reason I was going to tell you about it is because I was recently at the theater, and at the theater we were at, they have one of those revolving doors. You know what I'm talking about. I won't be able to draw it. I have no idea how to draw it. But it's like you go into a little section, and then there's another section, and people go in here and they walk outside. And the reason for those doors, I think, is to help keep cold air out and warm air in. Don't you think that's the reason? I think so. And my recollection was that there was a fire at the MGM Grand Casino Hotel in the 1980, I think it was in 1980. And that during that fire, people got held up at the revolving door. And that is the reason why they now always have exits on either side of the door. And those exits have to open out into the street. And this was my memory. And you know what? It was wrong. And I have told my boys that when we're somewhere. I've told other people that. That was just, I think my mom told me that, so I'm going to blame her. But probably if I asked her, she'd go, no, I didn't. But anyway, that was my memory. Well, it turns out that was not something that happened. There were crazy things, and one day we'll do the MGM casino, because that had some bad things too. But this is actually not from the MGM casino. It is from the Coconut Grove nightclub fire. My board, I think I have to get a new board. It just doesn't wipe off like it used to. And they spell Coconut Grove. I guess it was nightclub. I didn't really see that on the signage of the place, but nightclub fire. And this was a fire that happened on Thanksgiving night. So November 28th of the year 1942. So most of you will know that 1942 is during World War II. So that's where we are, going back in time. And for any of you who aren't from the U.S., I'll just tell you, the fire happened in Massachusetts, so we're over here in the Boston, right around there. And let me get out a map and I'll just show you. Okay, here we go. Get out our handy dandy road atlas. Find Massachusetts. Wow, look at that. There's Boston. Okay. So I believe that we are in this area right here. See where that... I wish there was a little... I don't think this gets us closer. Does that help you guys? Not really. Helps me, but doesn't help you. So we're right kind of in this area right here, I think. It was at 17 Piedmont Street. And it is currently on the building that's on what was the footprint is the Revere Hotel Boston Common. So it's right in this area. And the night that it happened, Thanksgiving night, there was a college football game at Fenway Park, which is right here. So you can see how pretty close it was. And there weren't all these highways at the time. They wouldn't have been built yet. They'd have been roads probably. So Fenway was hosting the Boston College Holy Cross football game. And so a lot of people after the game were like, it's cold out here. We need a little South Pacific vibe. And guess what? The Coconut Grove had a tropical theme. They had palm trees and they had what looked like water on the ceiling and, all that kind of fun South Pacific feeling. So everybody headed over to the Coconut Grove. Now, the Coconut Grove had a capacity of 460 people. But that night, it is estimated that there were between 800 and over 1,000 people. Hard to say, but way, way, way above double. Oh, at least double the capacity, really. And the club itself was owned by a guy his name was like Barney Walensky. And Barney, I think his name was like Barnett, but he went by Barney. He was kind of in with the mob. He was mobbed up. I don't know that he was like a made man or anything, but he was friends with the mafia, as the story goes. And he was also close with the mayor of Boston and some of the police, because there was a lot of things going on in Boston that time where those things overlapped. Let's just put it that way. And so he had bought the Coconut Grove off of people who owned it during Prohibition. And either during the Prohibition times or maybe Barney himself, they had bricked off some of the windows, closed up some of the exits, because they didn't want people sneaking out on their tabs. And even back then, there were codes, so there were code violations going on. But he was able to slide for years because he was friendly with the mob and the mayor and the police. And so there were a lot of code violations that were going on at the Coconut Grove. So the story goes that at 10:15 at night, there was, the way the palm trees were, they were like palm trees, and then they had the palm fronds. I don't know how to draw a palm frond, it turns out. And then within the palm tree, there was a light bulb. And so the palm trees were kind of, lights. And the story goes that a busboy was trying to fix a light bulb in a palm tree. And my understanding is, for some reason, this was in the basement of the place. I don't know. And it was dark, so he lit a match to be able to see inside the palms and see the light bulb. And that match caught the palms on fire and started the whole fire. So for a long time, the busboy was sort of the center of the blame. But later on, the Boston Fire Department, the chief of the fire department, did sort of a deep dive on this whole thing. And he kind of thinks the busboy was not the problem, that the palm tree probably had some kind of shady wiring going on, and that the reason the light bulb went out is because of the wiring, and that maybe that had a spark. And that is what kind of was the spark that started it. Now, I had questioned, what about all this cigarette smoking going on? But I guess there was always tons of cigarette smoking. That didn't seem to cause it. So they think it was something, sparked it. But once it started, because of all the decorations, so like on the Coconut Grove dance floor, and I saw a witness, a survivor, interview, and he talked about, or maybe it was she, I can't remember. I watched like 4 survivor interviews, and you can find those on YouTube. She talked about being on the dance floor, and you look up, and it sounds like they had like blue material covering the ceiling, so it looks like ocean waves maybe, or blue sky. I don't know. But it was like material above the dance floor. And then there were all these palm trees, and they had other decorations around, all highly flammable. So once that spark, whatever it was, started, the thing took off. And the more modern Boston Fire Department investigators, they think that the accelerant, beyond just the decorations, may have been methyl chloride, which would have been used as a refrigerant in like the air conditioning and also for keeping any of the beverages cool and everything. And the reason they would have been using that is because it was wartime. And so they were using all the Freon for war. They weren't allowed to buy it basically because they were going to use it for war, whatever they need it for in the World War II. So there was a shortage of Freon. And this methyl chloride is flammable. So they think it could be a mixture of the methyl fluoride and all the flammable, decorations. But it caught the place on fire. And the understanding from the fire department at the time, but also there were people who made it through, is that the whole thing really only lasted about under 15 minutes. I mean, some people say 8 to 10 minutes. Like it just went up. It just went up. And now you have a place that should hold 460, but you've got 800 to 1,000 people all trying to get out of the place at once. Now, let me see if I can get this picture to come up. Hold on, because I did, no, shoot. Hold on, let me see if it's, here we go. This isn't a great photo, but here's a picture of what the place looked like. So I thought, well, why didn't they break the windows and go out that way? And it turns out that the owner didn't want the windows, to be there. So he had put walls in front of the windows. So when you were inside, it was pitch black. There were no windows. And that's not unusual. A lot of bars, they want it to seem like nighttime in the daytime. But anyway, so people didn't know there was these plate glass windows behind the walls, which had like wood paneling on them. Or one of the fire chiefs at the time in an article said most of the glass was made out of glass block. And he said, you can't break through. I'm talking about the ones that are like cubes of glass they use in bathrooms sometimes. He said you can't break out of those if you wanted to. But this looks to me like plate glass, but I guess they couldn't break through them. And I think the fire department had trouble busting through these and then busting through the walls on the other side. So, and you imagine in 8 to 10 minutes, you're trying to figure out what to do. Well, this one door right here, apparently a revolving door. And that's the only door on the front. I'll tell you about the other door, but that's basically the only door on the front. So it was a single revolving door. And once a person falls down or gets trapped, that thing gets held up, there's nothing you can't get it going when you have a crush of people all pushing. So people just stacked up in front of that door and just could not get out of that door. The one guy I saw interviewed, he talks about how he realizes everybody is heading for this one exit. And, we're talking 900,000 people, whatever it is. And him and his wife are he's trying to figure out what to do. And she kind of got sucked into the crowd. And so he ran in there and grabbed her by her shoulders and pulled her out and said, we got to go the other direction. And the kitchen is over here somewhere. And so he sees the busboy who he recognizes, and he says, where do you exit? And the busboy points to another exit. I'm not sure exactly where it is. All I've heard is this story. But he says he sees the other exit has a door that opens in to the restaurant. And because of that, people got trapped in front of it. And they're on the ground. And he said they're just stacked up in front of that door. And he realizes there's no way. By the way, there is smoke everywhere. And the power has now gone out. So it's pitch black. And remember, all the windows are covered up. So it's smoky and dark. Well, my understanding from the way this man told his story is he looks up and I think, I told you there was like material on the ceiling. I think that had burnt away at this point. And so he sees in the ceiling a window of some sort. And it seems like it must have been on a sidewall. And so he moves the table and he gets his wife up on the table and helps her to get out the window. And he goes out the window and it takes them into an alleyway and they survived. Some of the other stories that they told, this one woman was with her husband and he said, put your, I think, I forget if he said put your napkin over your mouth or something, and had her get on the floor. And she did that. And she thinks she was near the front door, but she doesn't really remember. And I think she probably got a little bit crushed under there because she passed out. She doesn't remember what happened, except that she woke up in the hospital and she was alive. And then there was a story from a tap dancer who was there. And there was a second story to this building. So he's up the steps. And he hears all this commotion early on, so he opens his door and he sees all these people like they're kind of below the stairway where he is. And he thought that because of the Boston Holy Cross game, that there was a fight and that they were fighting because he knew it was going to be a super busy night and that it was very, big game and people would fight, you know what I mean? So at first he just thought it was a fight. And then while he was looking, he saw the smoke. So he closed the door to his room and he went to grab his expensive tap shoes and camel coat and everything. And then he was about to open the door to go back out to try to go out the exit because there was no exit upstairs. And as soon as he was about to do that, some man breaks through the door. So he's standing here and the door is here, and this man breaks through the door, and he said without even stopping, he doesn't even know how, he runs and he busts through a window, a plate glass window over here, and jumps out. And he says, oh my gosh, what's happening? So then he hears all the dancing girls coming down the hall who were already upstairs, and some of them were screaming. So I don't know if they were like on fire or what, but he realizes, oh my gosh, I gotta go. So he jumps out the window. And then he helps all the girls come out the window. And they're out on the rooftop of the building, kind of next door building or something. But they're up, 2 full stories off the ground, maybe a high story because this is a business. And they're like, oh boy. So somebody finds a ladder, and the ladder only goes this far. It goes like halfway. So him and the other guys hold the ladder and they get the dancing girls to go off, but it was taking a long time, and then they jump the last part. And apparently one of the girls went and got the fire department to come around that side of the building, and they were able to put a ladder up. And so everybody on the rooftop ended up getting off and living through the thing. So that's good. But a lot of people did not live through it. In fact, 492 people died. It was the deadliest nightclub fire in U.S. history and the 3rd deadliest single building fire in American history. So terrible. And beyond this, hundreds of people were injured. And oh my gosh, I heard this one story. This is a sad one. That there were 4 brothers who were servicemen, during World War II, and they were home on leave. And so these brothers were like, let's go out tonight. So they went to the Coconut Grove, and all 4 of them died. It's so sad. And so the mom, who was a widow, all her boys died. I was like, that's the saddest thing I've ever heard. But yeah, so the whole thing just happened like so fast. Now, if you want to see any kind of bright side, I guess, to it, the Boston, I think it was Boston Mass General Hospital, had been working on treatments for in case of emergency because they were on the East Coast of the U.S. here. They were concerned about possible bombings during World War II happening on the coast. So they had been doing air drills, different things to prepare for war. And one of the things that Boston Hospital had been doing was kind of trying to figure out, what do we do for emergency situations? So they had been doing drills and using new medicines and stuff, trying out things for emergencies. So it was kind of like that helped them with when like 166 people came into the hospital that night, and plus others who ended up dying, after. But because of that, they were on the fly trying new treatments like plasma for burn victims and penicillin to keep the burns victims from getting infections. And they had a huge blood bank stored up because of preparations for war. And so this was like the first time they were using some of these things for burn victims. And it worked. It was successful. So they went ahead and carried that into World War II battlegrounds. So that's, kind of interesting. Yeah. And, I told you about the Barney Walensky. He did get charged with 19 counts of manslaughter. He was sentenced to 12 to 15 years, and he was pardoned after 4 years. He had cancer. He ended up dying right after that. But they did investigate some of the police and the fire, because they hadn't followed up on the, safety of the building, but nobody was ever charged with anything other than Walensky. I think I'm saying his name right. I think it's Walensky. But after that, they did put in place some new laws that required emergency exits always be kept unlocked from the inside. Because like I said, a lot of these had been bricked over or were locked up to keep people from, sneaking out of the bar. And the one that I was thinking of at the beginning, they made it a law that if you have a revolving door, that you have to have it like flanked by doors that open outside for emergency purposes, not opening this way, but pushing out so that people can go out and they won't get stuck on the inside. I'm trying to remember. I can't think of how they said it, but they did say something like, if you can't fit all these, or it's like grandfathered in, this door can be made to somehow push out, fold out, so that it kind of opens up somehow. I forgot to look that up. If anyone knows about that, I think, like if it's an old building where you can't do this, you have some kind of door that comes out. I wonder how that works. I forgot to look that up. And then super flammable decorations were banned in public establishments. Is that still true? I don't know. because I think of that fire that happened at the nightclub not that long ago where they used pyrotechnics and it was in Rhode Island, right? And it caught the stuff on the ceiling on fire, right? Anyway, but it did, encourage these building exit codes, made people more aware. So anyway, that's it. And there's now in the area of Boston where it is, there's a plaque that they put up, and then there's also, I think in the park nearby, it says all the names of everyone who died during the Cocoanut Grove fire. So, and this is something I had never heard of until today. So there you go. But I think to this day, it's the deadliest nightclub fire in U.S. history. I'm pretty sure. I mean, that's a lot, 492 people. Let me think what else. I was looking up the Cocoanut Grove, and before this happened, Frank Sinatra played there before he was famous. So it was definitely like a place to be, It's like too bad stuff like that, because it does sound, I think about anytime I'm at a theater or anything, I always look for the exits. I'm always checking. One thing with the people they interviewed who had lived through this, they all said that they, as soon as they go somewhere, they know where all the exits are or windows for escape, like any way they can escape. And the one lady said anytime she books a hotel room, she always asks for the room closest to the exit. I was like, huh, interesting. Yeah. I think I've told this before, but I was at Costco not very long ago, and the fire alarm started going off, and the lack of reaction from everybody inside that store struck me as really, really strange. I was like, am I crazy? I was heading towards the exit because I'm like, I'm not playing around with fire, dude. I don't do that. But nobody was reacting to the point where I was like, am I in the Twilight Zone? I stopped somebody. I go, do you hear that fire alarm? And they're like, yeah, I guess it's probably just, I don't know, test or something. I'm like, test in the middle of the day. Before I made it to the exit, it turned off and whatever. But I just thought it was like very strange that nobody reacted at all. And when I was talking to my husband about it, I was telling him this story just now, and he was talking about that Rhode Island nightclub fire, and you can watch a video of it. And he said it was really weird watching the video how many people just weren't reacting to it. And I said, well, they must have thought it was part of the show. And he said, but it was real obvious that it had caught the ceiling on fire, and they're still just standing there, not really reacting. And I don't know what's up with that. I don't know. I think if you hear a fire alarm, you should react. And hopefully it's nothing. And you go, I reacted for nothing. But I don't know. Anyway, so that is the story of the Cocoanut Grove nightclub fire in Boston, Massachusetts in 1942. Club had a capacity of 460, but there were at least 800 there. It happened at 10:15 at night, but they think within, some people say 8 to 10 minutes, the whole thing was over. Maybe methyl chloride helped in the refrigerant because of wartime shortage of Freon. That may have kind of made it go faster. There were 492 deaths, and it was the deadliest nightclub fire in U.S.